Welcome back at 7:21 and time to talk about impaired driving. Here's a sobering statistic. Road crashes are the leading cause of death among Canadian youth. And impairment by drugs or alcohol is involved in more than half of those crashes. Those stats are according to Mad Canada. And to prevent tragedies on the roads this year and year-round, the charitable organization is holding an annual Project Red Ribbon campaign. Here to tell us more is the CEO of Mad Canada, Steve Sullivan. Good morning, Steve.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
It's our pleasure. We love to shine a spotlight on this important issue. The Red Ribbon campaign already underway. It started November 1st. What's the focus for this year's campaign?
So this year, it's really the focus remains the same, just trying to raise awareness in the community about impaired driving, about the risks of impaired driving, and really getting people to start thinking about it as we approach the holiday season, where there's a lot more celebrations going on. People are out with staff, their fellow staff members, their friends, and celebrating, which is wonderful. But there's always, we want to make sure that people have a safe ride home, so they plan ahead. Whether that's public transportation, sober friend, Uber, whatever that looks like, taxi. If you plan ahead, then you don't have to worry about it, and you can just have fun with your friends and colleagues.
It's so important to keep safety top of mind and know that this time of year there'll be a lot more patrolling and ticketing. They are looking out for impaired drivers. What are the current stats on impaired driving?
Well, it's always hard to tell because it often depends on the activity of the law enforcement agency. So, for example, in some jurisdictions, we see the rates increasing because police are more proactive. They're out there more using tools like mandatory alcohol screening. You're catching more drug impaired drivers because they're better trained. But in other jurisdictions, I know, in Halifax, for example, they're seeing some high numbers of fatalities, just road fatalities. And consequently, they're also seeing lower tickets being issued and fines, that kind of thing. So enforcement is really important, but it really tells us a lot about what police are doing as opposed to how many impaired drivers there are on the road. We just know there's too many people still making those choices.
It's hard to believe that it's still happening so prevalently. I know that the issue with cannabis, that the way that police can detect if drivers are under the influence of drugs, that has really changed. So they are probably seeing more cases of cannabis-related impairment. That's what I've heard.
Yeah, they're certainly better trained. So we have what we call the standard field sobriety test. So if you've ever watched the cop show, you see them on the side of the road who do that. And then they also have the ability to use what's called an oral fluid device, so at roadside, which will detect the presence of recent use of cannabis. So police certainly have more tools. They're better trained, and they're just looking for it more. So obviously they're going to find those drivers.
I know that you're focusing on students in 2025. Soon there will be some programming taking place in schools in New Brunswick and across the country. But why are students a focus?
Well, as you mentioned in the introduction, impaired driving hits young people disproportionately. They're new drivers. They're also new to alcohol or cannabis consumption. So those two combinations are really not great. So we see the rates of impaired driving fatalities for young people way too high. There have been reductions. I mean, many provinces have brought in zero tolerance for new and novice drivers. Those are really important things. But this is a group that we want to make sure understands the risks. We also understand how hard it is to be a young person and the pressure that you have if you're somewhere and your friends are drinking and all those kinds of things that come into play when you're a young person. We want to give them tools. We want to educate them, give them options about making the right choices and how that can impact your life down the road, whether that's hopefully not a tragedy, but even if you get arrested and charged with impaired driving as a young person, that could impact your future plans.
That's a great point. Well, Steve, we really appreciate your time this morning. Thank you so much for this and all the work you do.
Well, thanks again for having us. I really appreciate it.
That was Steve Sullivan with Mad Canada. We have put a link to their website on ours so you can find out more information about impaired driving and how you can support the organization.